Good morning. Savannah Huemoeller here with Kristi Scales from Cowboys Radio. Kristi, how are you doing this morning?
Thanks for having me on.
Of
Great morning.
course.
Our last full practice of camp.
It is crazy that it has come to that time where we're at the end of everything here in Oxnard. For you, what would you say is one of your personal highlights being out here in Oxnard?
Just the way the fans have embraced Deuce Vaughn. Not a surprise that it happened, but the Deuce calls that were heard at AT&T Stadium during his electric debut against the Jaguars in preseason game 1, that actually started out here. And so he's very relatable. He's so serious-minded, well-spoken, well-prepared, and just mature beyond his years. Maybe that's growing up in a football family, but that's been fun. Also to see a young guy like Jalen Brooks, late-round draft pick, the rookie wide receiver number 83, really emerge. He didn't really get to show it as much in preseason game 1, so look forward to what he's going to do in Seattle this coming weekend. But also Jalen Tolbert, he had talked to the media at length in the offseason during OTAs and mini camps about his growth and confidence, and that he really felt that he had positioned himself to make a leap in year 2, and he did show it in preseason game 1, and that's just a continuation of what he did the first 2.5 weeks here at camp. So it's good to see the things that are talked about actually manifest themselves on the practice field.
100%, and I think definitely here at camp, after this first preseason game we just had this last weekend, even yesterday at practice, just the chance with Deuce, everyone in the crowd just so excited to see him out there. And then Jalen Tolbert yesterday had an amazing catch in the end zone.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts there when that happened?
Whoa. That was just like, wow, he just stopped on a dime, kept his feet down, was kind of leaning back when he made the catch in the back of the end zone. That's definitely one of the highlight plays of camp. But also, I think it's been a lot of really good work for these young offensive linemen. We're not going to see any of the starters, this weekend in Seattle. Zach Martin, yes, he's back in camp as of August 15th, and he did participate in position group work, not any of the team drills. That may not be until next week. But I think that a big question mark on this team is depth along the offensive line, and so we're going to, and they did, It was a little bit rough when you had the Cowboys 2s and 3s going against Jacksonville's first teamers, but let's see if they can do better in week 2.
And obviously one of the biggest storylines this week is Zach Martin coming back. And although he's not out here actually making some of those plays right now to get started, how do you think his leadership, just being here on the field, is already just making an impact, him coming back to camp?
Just the reaction of the players. Terrence Steele was asked, hey, what about when Zach came back? It's like, I grabbed him and I hugged him. And Zach, talking about even though he had been staying in touch with his teammates, had been watching the practice film and the like when he got here, just everyone literally embracing him. And I think it felt really good for him. And he did have the sit-down one-on-one with the Joneses, with Jerry, and I think still feels the respect that the team has for him. And now that they've done the business part of it, let's put it behind behind us, and then look forward to it. And his gamble paid off. $50,000 a day, fines that can no longer be rescinded. That's a rule change from a few years ago. In the past, teams would be able to waive that fine. The teams aren't allowed to do that now. So Zach's out $850,000 for the time that he missed, but he's getting an extra $8.5 million. So I'd say that Zach is a good businessman too.
He made up for that. That's for sure.
He definitely did. And this year and next year, all that money is guaranteed. So he ends up basically a little over $18 million for each of the 2 seasons, whereas coming into this year, it was going to be about $14 million for this season.
Let's talk about this defense a little bit. One of the key players that I saw from this first preseason game, Juane Thomas, had an incredible pick in the first quarter. How do you think Dan Quinn's coaching has already impacted even some of these younger guys coming in here during training camp?
Yeah, I think the way that Dan Quinn utilizes his defensive backs, and Thomas is one of those players that he's actually been playing back a little more, not so much as like a J-Ron Curse, or they've been using Marquise Bell, the second-year player. He made the team as a rookie free agent last year. They've had him more kind of matched up in the slot. But, Wanye being on the practice squad all last year, he was practicing, he was in the system. He was exposed to it. He's had a full off season to work. And Savannah, I think that's the thing where when coaches talk about a second-year leap for players, it has to do a lot with being in the off-season conditioning program and having a whole year to work rather than coming in as a rookie, arriving in late April or early May and having it all dropped onto you at one time. So I think he's one of these players that benefited. And I have to say that on a personal level, I'm rooting for Wanye because, as you know, the rookie club that does so much off the field work, right? So many charity events, and had an opportunity to MC a couple of those events in which Wanye Thomas and those guys were taking part, and to see him interact with the kids. We had one called Everybody Plays, and it's where special needs kids are mainstreamed in with their elementary and middle school classmates, and so they're all out at the Star and they're taking part in like a little flag football, little football drills.
There we go.
And to see him interact, I've been a fan of his since seeing him do that, and I'm just so pleased that he's played well. And on the second play of scrimmage in that first preseason game, he got his interception.
And as we move into our game against Seattle this weekend, do you project still some of those starting players potentially hopping in a little bit of those slots to get some playing time, or are we really just going to see a lot of switches on those second and third teams?
I think it'll be as it was in preseason game one, where there'll be a few select veterans. Last week, the only starters on defense that played in the game were Damone Clark at linebacker, and then Osa Adighi was considered by most of us as a starter, but he got some play time. And then on offense, it was just Jake Ferguson and then Peyton Hendershot who played a lot. So the two second-year tight ends, all of the other starters rested, and I anticipate that moving forward through preseason. That
Right.
Let the young guys do it. They don't want to risk any injury to the starters.
Exactly. And we will see what happens in Seattle this upcoming weekend. We have 2 more practices here in Oxnard, California. Kristi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Savannah.